So this is the making of the Good Luck Paperweight, and it all starts with gathering up some hot glass out of the furnace, and I'm picking up a color background here that'll provide that nice deep cobalt blue at the back of the paperweight. And it takes various reheats to bring it up to temperature, get it all nice and molten. The first thing to do is to even it up on the pipe. You notice a glass blower is always turning to keep everything centered. And we'll trim off the end a little bit, clean it up with a pair of diamond shears, and that's one of the most important tools a glass blower can use. You can cut and shape and get everything ready. And in addition to the deep cobalt, I use some white small chips, and they will provide that Starry Nights background. And I add them on kind of a random pattern designed to look like constellations and stars in the sky. And using a Marver table, you can shape the glass and get everything nice and centered. And I primarily use wet newspaper to do my shaping. And with a little bit of water, it provides as close as you can get to the glass without actually touching that 2000 degree heat. Again, everything is getting nice and centered before doing a case gather, getting clear glass over the outside. And I'm just making sure everything's nice and centered beforehand. So that's just kind of a general background of the piece. And now I'll get a case gather, which is dipping this whole piece to the base in clear glass, and then I'll put the decoration on. And I'll let some of the glass drip off into that pot so you'll see how hot the glass is. So at the working temperature, that's 2130 degrees, and it just drips right off. So again, that's why I'm always turning the pipe to keep everything centered, because you're working with gravity and centrifugal force, and you try to use those to the best of your ability. Keep everything nice and flat and even. A lot of times you touch the glass as little as possible. Try torching this a little bit different. So most of the work I specialize in is called torch work design, and it's using canes of glass that I pulled out and designed, and then by melting just the tip of that cane of glass, I can apply a molten surface to what I'm working on and create the decoration. In this case, a 4-leaf clover background. So I use a green over white cane, and by melting the tip of that cane and looking at the shape and the temperature, I apply just the tip. And right here I'm making 4 teardrop shaped petals to the 4-leaf clover. And I only have a about a minute or two that I can be out of the furnace, so I can do 3 or 4 petals at a time, and then I have to get back into the furnace to keep everything nice and warm. And when everything's been heated up a little bit, I can use a pick to accent the design. So I take each of those teardrops and I pick in the center, and that creates those heart-shaped clover petals. Once all the design is on there, the torch work, it's a matter of flattening it out, smoothing it, and getting everything ready for the final case gather. A lot of glass blowing is a balance of temperature and knowing how hot the glass is at any given time, how much you can shape it, touch it, move it. And my last little accent piece to this is to poke in right at the middle, and that creates a little depression, and when I go in for my case gather, there'll be a little tiny bubble created, and it's meant to look like a dewdrop. I try to have a little signature mark on each of the pieces I do. I also pull up slightly at the base of the clover, and then it'll be ready for the case gather, which is encasing the entire decoration, thereby making it appear suspended in the glass. A lot of people ask me how I get my decoration inside the glass, and it's actually, as you see, it's on the surface as I'm decorating, and now I'm going in and encasing that entire piece in clear glass. I'll let any excess drip off into the bucket and I'll reuse that at a later time. And now that decoration is encased and appears suspended. And I use little fruit wood blocks to make a nice even marble shape, and then I always finish everything with the newspaper. Gives it that hand sculpted touch. And the last thing is to put a jack line in where it will separate the piece from the pipe that I'm working on. You want a nice clean break at the end. So I use a pair of round jacks and then a pair of blade jacks. Constantly turning. And then when we're done, I apply a little bit of water at the base on that clean line. And there you see the finished piece. The Good Luck Paperweight. One little crack, and it comes right off, and it's still 1,000 degrees at this point, so it goes into an annealing oven where it'll slowly cool down over 16 to 18 hours. And there it is, all finished.
My first experience with glass blowing was in college in 1991. I took it as an elective. There was just something magical about it, and I kind of came back around to it after about 3 years of being a residential house counselor with developmentally disabled adults down in Maryland. I was actually looking for a way to move back home to Vermont, and Simon Pierce was hiring production glass assistants. And I was like, hey, I did that once, but I could do that again. In Simon Pierce, I was there for about 4 years, from 1993 to 97, and that was probably the best place to get a foundation in glass blowing. I was actually going to stay about 5 years, I think, at the time, as was my line of thinking, but I met my fiance, and she wanted an adventure, I wanted an adventure, so we started looking for places around the country, and in Chico, California, we found that. They had glass at their university. They had 2 world-renowned glass studios. I ended up working at Orient and Flume Art Glass in Chico, and that's where I learned the techniques that I use now. There was, going from Simon Pierce, I had enough experience to be dangerous. I had a pretty good fundamentals, but no color experience, no artistic experience. So that's what I took from Orient and Flume, was working with guys that had been blowing glass for 30 years, doing all kinds of techniques, from iridescent glass to the torch work design, the painting with glass style that I specialize in now, Latticino, Italian techniques, Swedish techniques, all kinds of stuff. I was a kid in a candy shop. I'm a product of my experiences. I took the practical, functional aspect of the Simon Pierce, the production crystal, and then I spent 7 years doing primarily artistic glass, stylistic, just a whole new approach. And I think because of those 2 experiences and just who I am, I'm in the process of melding both of those. I do a variety of pieces, from sculpted animals and fruits, collectible paperweights, but I also throw in some functional stemware and candlesticks and things like that. And I'm not kind of bottled down with any one technique, and I allow myself enough room to be able to express myself artistically. I get a lot of ideas from people that walk in, see a piece that I have, and say, hey, can you make this? And where I am now allows me a lot of freedom to, yeah, sure, let's try it. And often out of that will come a new piece or a new direction for the time being.